Well, good afternoon, everyone. We appreciate you taking the time to be here. This is a public input session, and there is a joint committee of the House and Senate on redistricting. This is not that committee meeting. This is the House Redistricting Committee and the Senate Redistricting Committee meeting jointly. Before we get started, I'd like to thank the Senate Sergeant at Arms, and if you'll raise your hand and be recognized as I'll call your name so everyone will know who is here that's responsible for helping us keep order, I would appreciate it. Terry Barnhart from the Senate. From the House, we have Jonas Cherry and Stafford Young. I'd also like to thank and recognize from the General Assembly Police Officer Barkaffer and Officer Torres. Thank you for making the trip. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank all of the General Assembly staff, most of which are out in the hallway that helped organize this meeting. A key person is directly behind me as well. I hope you all enjoyed your trip to the mountains. You can see now why on Thursday afternoons I'm always in a hurry to leave the General Assembly and get back here into this wonderful country. I'm sorry. My name is Chuck Edwards, Senator Chuck Edwards. I represent District 48, Henderson, Transylvania, and Buncombe County, and I also sit on both the Joint Oversight Committee for Elections and Redistricting, as well as the Senate Elections and Redistricting Committee. So, yeah, thank you for reminding me. I appreciate all of you being here this afternoon, for taking the time to provide us feedback on a very important process, a historical process, to redraw the maps under which the General Assembly and our Congress will run under for the next 10 years. Many of you are here to speak, and we appreciate the opportunity to hear from you. Many of you are here just to listen and show an interest in the process, and I thank you for taking time to be with us as well. I appreciate all of you taking time and recognizing the opportunity and the importance in participating in your state government, and I hope that you recognize the efforts that the General Assembly has taken to get out to all 13 congressional districts and to hear from the public directly on the ideas that they may have in embarking on this process. I noticed that some of you have some signs in the audience, and that's great. You're welcome to keep those with you. I would ask that you keep them below your chin so that we don't obstruct the view of the folks behind you. And I'd also like for each of us just to take a few seconds through this process this afternoon to reflect on the benefit that we have in participating in a system like this. Isn't it great that we're a part of a government where we can have a voice, where we can have a say, where those folks that govern will listen, and that we can collaborate on such an important process. I would like to also introduce the folks that are here from the General Assembly to participate in this. We have Representative Carney, we have Representative Clampett, we have Representative Pless, and your name's escaping me because of the mask.
Representative Gillespie.
Oh, Gillespie. And we have Senator Mayfield down on the end. I appreciate all of you being here to listen firsthand and to show interest in this process. With that, we're going to move directly into the public input session. You may recall that there are two ways that folks could register to provide us input this afternoon. An online enrollment process began about a week ago, and it ended at 1 o'clock this afternoon. I have all of those names in front of me. It's quite a lengthy list. I hope all of these folks are here, and we're happy that they did sign up. And then beginning at 4 o'clock this afternoon, you could sign up right outside. And I understand that the folks outside the door are going to continue to take sign-ups and continue to hand me sheets as we continue through this process. So with that, let's get started. I'm going to apologize right up front if I mess anybody's name up. Please just correct me if I mispronounce a name. And as you come up, if you would introduce yourself, and if you're representing any particular group, if you would tell us that. So I'll welcome first to the podium Jake Quinn. And before you get started, we've agreed beforehand that each speaker will have two minutes. So if you can hold it to that, we'd appreciate it. Mr. Quinn?
Thank you. Good evening, General Assembly members and staff. And thank you for this opportunity to address the subject of redistricting in North Carolina. My name is Jake Quinn. I'm a Buncombe County resident, and I welcome your invitation to share my testimony with you. I rise here to challenge you to accomplish a feat of uncommon strength. Offer North Carolina a set of maps that does not beg for judicial review. Give us districts where people can say that, while they themselves might have drawn them differently, they see nothing inherently unfair in the General Assembly's maps. Please exorcise the ghost of Thomas Hofeller. Now, I view that as a hefty challenge in light of what we've seen over the past decade, but it is one that I pray that you will accept and meet. Since 2013, we have seen North Carolina have to defend numerous sets of maps at a cost of millions of dollars in legal fees, and we lost about every case. Add to those millions the enormous costs that the state and 100 county boards of elections have to bear, updating their databases and voter records, and notifying every affected voter after each new law and each new court decision. Unconstitutional maps are expensive. The changes confuse and alienate voters, and the inconsistency and disruptions undermine our electoral processes. The legitimacy of Republican democracy hinges on the fairness of the process by which the people choose their representatives. And so my challenge to you is to support a healthy, robust electoral process that sees its stability enhanced by a set of maps that North Carolina, all of North Carolina, will see as fair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. It occurs to me also I missed thanking a significant group of folks, and that's the staff of Western Carolina University. We appreciate you welcoming us to this beautiful facility and being so hospitable. Thank you. Jane Koenig. Jane Koenig. Thank you, Ms. Koenig.
Yes, it's Jane Koenig. I'm from Canada Precinct down the road in Jackson County. And I want to talk about the 11th Congressional District today. It's one of the largest districts in the entire state, 16 and a half counties, really only matched by, I think it's number 3 on the other far end of the state. It's a lot of territory for one person to cover, much less to cover well. Numbers-wise, and I sat down with the 2020 numbers. Thank you for putting them online for us. Current population in North Carolina is almost 10.5 million people. You've got another congressional district added because we've been so successful at attracting more people. So you divide that by 14 districts, and you get 745,000 and some. Oh, thank you. Which ranges from 708,300 some to 782,000 based on your criterion of a plus or minus 5% around the mean population. The current population of NC11 as it stands today is 5.8% over the mean, so something's got to go. Two things that came up that seemed easy to me. One is to take out McDowell County. That would bring us down to 744,000 and some, which is perfect. Another option, if we are trying to stick with keeping our counties whole, is to take out that little half of Rutherford County and maybe attach either Polk or Avery to it, which would also bring us within the range around the mean. So that's what I would like to suggest.
Thank you, Ms. Cohn. Next on my list, I see Bertramus. Bertramsess. Is that a person? Their organization is Bertramsess. All right, we're going to skip over that one for now. What about Graham McGuffick?
Thank you. My name is Graham McGuffick. I currently reside in Asheville, North Carolina, Buncombe County, though I lived in Jackson County here for 6 years and have a 24-year-old son born at Harris Regional down the road here. I'm here representing a political action committee. We have a project out there called FireMadison.com. Our only goal is to fire Madison Cawthorn. During the previous decade, NC11 was one of the worst gerrymandered districts in the state and even the country, splitting traditionally progressive Asheville in half in order to make what had been a fairly purple district into an incredibly red district is an example of the worst in extreme gerrymandering. And though NC11 is now not so badly gerrymandered, it's a cautionary tale for the negative impacts of gerrymandering. Gerrymandering leads to candidates who are more extreme being elected. Whether the gerrymandering is at the hands of the Democrats, we've done it, and the Republicans, who most definitely have done it, and that isn't good for anyone, because most people in any district are closer to the middle than to the extreme fringes. The gerrymandering put into place by the GOP majority of the North Carolina General Assembly in 2011 led to Mark Meadows winning the GOP primary and then the general election in 2012. He was known as one of the most conservative members of Congress over his 7 years in office. And his replacement, Madison Cawthorn, with little job experience, no educational background, and completely unqualified for the job, is possibly even more conservative and completely ineffective. Both were elected as a direct consequence of extreme gerrymandering. We are a purple state. Thanks, Jake. Our representation in D.C. and Raleigh should reflect that. Aren't our elected officials supposed to represent all of the people in their districts, not just those who voted for them? I asked the members of the House Redistricting Committee and the Senate Redistricting and Elections Committees to allow the people of North Carolina to select their representatives and not vice versa. Thank you.
Myrtle Schroeder.
Hello, I'm Myrtle Schroeder. I'm a resident of Cullowhee. I've been here since 1968. And I ask you to please redistrict Jackson County with no division. In fact, keep all of our western counties whole. Draw fair maps so all votes are counted with equal weight in determining the winner of any election. Presently, gerrymandering makes some votes count more and other votes to count less in determining which candidate is elected. All of the people's voices need to be heard. All of the constituents in each district needs to be represented by a winner. Democracy can only ring true and even exist if the electoral process works fairly and voters trust it. The computer tools are now available to make North Carolina true to our state motto, to be rather than to seem. The Tar Heel state used to be a leader on so many fronts. Make the right to vote in fair elections a reality for all of our citizens. Thank you.
Roy Osborne.
Thank you for being here, and thanks to Western for hosting this. My name is Roy Osborne. I'm a resident of Cullowhee, North Carolina. Gerrymandering is typically a contentious voting issue, and political parties historically have used that technique to ensure that certain districts within specific voting district boundaries favor their candidates to the extent that their candidates will win an election regardless of their opponent's merit or the will of all the people being represented. That being said, now today is the perfect time to begin anew using nonpartisan committees and analysts to choose redistricting criteria that enable legitimately unbiased voting districts and to implement the criteria by drawing fair and equitable nonpartisan voting districts at the local, state, and national levels. The same computers that provided surgical solutions to gerrymandered districts in the past can also be used to construct surgically fair districts that are much closer in constituent party distribution than the 5% criterion used for the current redistricting plan. Thank you. Competitive districts mean that candidates will be obligated to solicit votes from all district constituents because one can't win without convincing more than half the voters of one being the best candidate. That is true and trustworthy representative democracy. Elected officials who represent and are accountable to all the people. Best of all, fair and competitive elections mean no elections are called minutes after the polls closed. Instead, we watch the election returns with bated breath until most or all precincts are counted, and will make those cable TV pundits stay up all night guessing the results. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Osborne. Nina Tovish?
My name is Nina Tovish. I live in Buncombe County. Democracy depends on people's trust and confidence in the legitimacy of our institutions. And the foundation of those institutions, the bedrock of that trust, is the fairness of our elections. Democracy cannot survive if voters feel disenfranchised. Democracy cannot flourish if voters feel that elections have foregone conclusions. Democracy cannot be sustained if the electorate believes that nothing they do has a chance of making a difference. You've heard this before. Why should I vote? My vote doesn't matter. People say this both when they're in the minority and when they're in the majority. A democracy where a high proportion of eligible voters don't participate isn't really a democracy. Faith in the political system is at a low ebb at the moment. Cynicism is rampant. Money seems to rule, and people entrenched in positions of power seem willing to do just about anything to remain there. A vital first step is to restore voters' confidence in elections. That means undertaking an open and impartial redistricting process. That means entrusting redistricting to a commission that doesn't have skin in the game. Give people a reason to believe in democracy. Let them know that their participation matters. Help rebuild people's faith in free and fair elections. I believe we are at risk of losing our democracy, and redistricting can either contribute to saving our democracy or hasten its downfall. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tovish. Thomas Carver. Thomas Carver. Matt Balance.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Balance. I'm the chair of the NC 11th Congressional District Democrats. I want to thank the committee members for being here today and listening to the needs and wants of our community here inside of District 11. I live inside of Henderson County in District 11, and there's a lot of eloquent speakers in this room that are going to hit on a lot of points. And one that I've already heard right off the bat is the issue of keeping our counties whole. There are so many examples right here inside of District 11 where lines have been drawn in a way that cut our communities and our counties in half. Currently, the line between the 11th and 5th Congressional District split Rutherford County right down the middle. On a state level, the majority of Haywood County is currently inside of House 118, while Waynesville is carved out and placed inside of 119, away from the rest of the county. Likewise, on the Senate side, northern and eastern Buncombe County is placed into NNC Senate 48, while the rest of the county is represented by Senate 49. This splitting of counties causes a lack of clarity and confusion for the constituency regarding who is representing whom, and keeping counties whole assures that the needs of the different communities located within our counties is heard. Instead of placing a partial slice of Buncombe County inside of Senate 48, I think there are things that can be done, such as making Buncombe whole inside of Senate 49 and offsetting the change by placing Polk County inside of 48 instead of 47th. The needs of the electorate in Polk County are much more aligned with those in the other southern border counties of Transylvania and Henderson County than they are with those of the northern border counties of Mitchell, Yancey, and Madison County. We have to keep our neighbors with our neighbors so that our voices can be heard on a collective area. Those are our concerns. You're going to hear a lot more, much more eloquent than I. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Balance. Next up, I'd like to invite Kathleen Barnes.
Hello, my name is Kathleen Barnes. I'm Secretary and Political Action Chair of the Transylvania NAACP. I'm most concerned about the North Carolina redistricting process as it has already presented itself, and in a way that is logical to anticipate how this will play out. First is this hearing itself. I'm speaking with you face to face with scores, maybe hundreds of other people in the room, despite the risk of COVID spread. Some people are unmasked. It is that important to me to be here. You made no provision for live streaming in this hearing and public comment. This shows an extreme disregard for public health. I drove here today from Transylvania County. It took us 2 hours to get here. You set this hearing in a location in the 11th Congressional District that is remote and accessible to the public only with great difficulty on a workday at 5 p.m. This made attendance untenable for working voters. This is an unpromising start from a committee that promises it will draw fair maps. This, in fact, makes it abundantly clear you do not intend to draw fair maps at all. Then there are those maps. Well, those non-existent maps at this moment. Even though it's been barely more than a month since the official census results were released, it has been known for 9 or 10 months or more that North Carolina has gained population and new districts would need to be drawn. Do you really expect the people of North Carolina, the ones who elected you, to believe that you haven't drawn anticipated maps or even several versions? And how can we, the people, comment on maps in these sham public hearings if we can't see them? And it appears we will never have an opportunity to comment on the actual maps because there are no further public hearings scheduled after they are released. So no, I cannot comment on the maps. No one can. I can only comment on the process. This process is flawed beyond redemption. It foretells a gerrymandered North Carolina that does not represent all of our communities.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Next, I'd like to call C.J. Breeland. C.J. Breeland.
Good evening. My name is C.J. Breeland. My husband and I have lived in Asheville for 21 years. I retired from teaching high school 2 years ago. We vote in every election. It is clear that Congressional District 11 will need to be redrawn based on growth reflected in the 2020 census, and I believe that the majority of people of Western North Carolina will be better served if the counties of Polk, McDowell, and the portion of Rutherford are removed, and Watauga is added to District 11. Watauga County shares our topography, environmental concerns, and the joys and stresses of tourism. We not only share the beauty of our mountains, but also the challenges of maintaining mountain roads and other infrastructure in a changing climate. Watauga shares our dilemmas about how to deal with increasing tourism without destroying the natural beauty tourists came to enjoy. In addition, Appalachian State University is located in Watauga County. District 5, Watauga's current district, has many fine community colleges, but App State is the only four-year public university. In District 11, ASU would join UNCA and Western, augmenting the voices of those advocating for four-year colleges and the students who attend them. Subtracting Polk, McDowell, and the current sliver of Rutherford County, then adding Watauga, gives District 11 the ideal population for a congressional district. I did the math. I request that you consider this option. Also, my husband and I drove more than an hour to get to this meeting. I urge you to schedule virtual meetings so that more people in North Carolina cities will have the opportunity to express their opinions to you out loud. Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. The chair would like to ask the Sergeant-at-Arms assistants, when you indicate a card with a time on it to the speaker, would you also flash it to me so I can keep track of where we're at? Thank you. Daniel Perlmutter?
Thank you. My name is Dan Perlmutter. I'm a resident of just the next valley or hollow or cove over in Jackson County. My wife and I have been here for over 30 years. There are several things I'd like to address, but given the shortness of time, I'll make this quite short and take a different tack. We are going to experience an amazing change in terms of our environment. And I'm not sure whether people recognize that the lines drawn for the various districts should represent the physiognomy of the area. In other words, mountains, Piedmont, or coastal. And we are going to need the expertise and the solutions that arise from good higher education institutions. And we have had them mentioned already, and Western Carolina is one of them. But I'm most concerned about Asheville. I want the integrity of the UNCA and the community colleges in that area kept whole by keeping the entire area whole. So when this tidal change of climate change affects us, we will have the expertise in our area to help us deal with it. Thank you.
Sadie Wuckert. Sadie Wuckert. Sadie Wuckert. W-U-C-K-E-R-T. All right, we'll move on to Cynthia Faircloth Smith.
My name is Cynthia Faircloth Smith, and I moved to Jackson County in 2012. My husband and I made a home here and quickly became a part of this welcoming community. I began teaching as an adjunct English instructor at Southwestern Community College, and the first assignment this Flatlands girl received was a critical reading class at Blue Ridge Early College in Cashers, located at the southern end of the county, but at its highest point, accessible only by 25 minutes of winding roads, cascading waterfalls, and fall-to-your-death cliffs. In short, I fell in love with the drive through Shangri-La and was transported to another world each time. For 6 years, I traveled up the mountains. I provide this personal narrative to emphasize how important it is to keep North and South Jackson County together as you face the task of redistricting North Carolina. While the Cashiers, Glenville, Silva, Dillsboro areas seem like two separate entities, they are not. For example, our county commissioners are comprised of 4 elected officials from North Jackson and 1 from South Jackson who work as a unit to ensure the well-being of all Jackson citizens. Recently, when Mark Jones was elected to the commission, he promised to support the revitalization of Blue Ridge School, but that cannot be accomplished without the support of fellow commission members representing North and Jackson County. I respectfully ask that you keep Jackson County whole in your plans to redistrict. Since the citizens of this county see themselves as a unit politically, socially, educationally, and culturally, despite the geographical boundaries punctuated by winding roads and different elevations. Because the welfare of Jackson County hinges upon these efforts, please keep it together.
Thank you, Ms. Faircloth Smith. Mr. Ted Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ted Carr from Haywood County. 2 points quickly. I think it is unconscionable that the districting will be based on a census, 2020 census, that made no distinction between a citizen, U.S. citizen that can vote and a illegal who cannot vote. But clearly, the majority of not voting in the population benefits the larger counties, and therefore our western counties are disadvantaged by that. Second point, the laws that have been adopted for this redistricting follow the U.S. Constitution. And in that regard, I think there should be no change in those requirements late in the game. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Carr. The chair calls Cody Lewis. Cody Lewis.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'll keep this as concise as I can. I'm not a huge public speaker. My name is Cody Lewis, as you said. I'm a 9th generation resident of Jackson County. My family's homestead is just across the mountain that they homesteaded in 1795. Currently, I serve as the chairman of the Jackson County Democrats. So in that capacity, I would like to implore you to keep Jackson County whole and keep all counties whole. That long history in Jackson County has shown me and shown, I think, everyone in this room that issues that face county face entire counties, not portions of counties, not municipalities within counties, especially in the western half of the state. And I think any fiscally conservative member of the House or of any legislative body should try to avoid adding to the $7 million in taxpayer debt that we've accumulated during the court cases involved with gerrymandering over the last 7 to 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Sharon Withrow.
My name is Sharon Withrow, and I'm here on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Asheville-Buncombe County and the League of Women Voters of Henderson County. I took time off work and drove an hour to be here, since this is the only public hearing on redistricting you scheduled in Western North Carolina. Please remember that many of your constituents were not able to overcome logistical challenges to be here this afternoon. The League of Women Voters believes that districts should not intentionally favor or disfavor any individual or political party and should not be drawn to protect incumbents. Legislative districts should be compact and contiguous. Districts should avoid splitting cities, counties, and communities of interest such as university campuses. Until a lawsuit forced the redrawing of districts, there were 2 dormitories at UNC Asheville that were split between congressional districts. If you lived on one side of the building, you were in the 10th Congressional District. If you lived on the other side, you were in the 11th Congressional District. When I would do voter registration among UNCA students, I could not look at them and tell them that this was an example of good governance or the responsible use of power. This kind of gerrymandering leads to cynicism among voters as well as unaccountability in politicians. Gerrymandering also leads to lawsuits. The maps drawn in 2011 led to the expenditure of almost $11 million defending the maps in court. Regardless of your political priorities, that money could have been put to much better use on behalf of North Carolina citizens. Fair voter maps will reduce the impact of litigation on the people of North Carolina. Finally, the League of Women Voters is asking for more public hearings after the draft maps have been proposed so that citizens can give informed feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Withrow. The chair would like to recognize Jeffrey Rose. Jeffrey Rose. Is there a Jeffrey Rose in the room? All right, we will move on to Avraham Freedman. Welcome, Mr. Freedman.
Hello, I'm Avraham Freedman. That's how you pronounce it. And I currently serve as the chair of the Political Action Committee of the Jackson County, North Carolina branch of the NAACP. Thank you to the legislators who are holding a series of public hearings throughout the state with the stated purpose of including the input of citizens in determining fair congressional and legislative districts in North Carolina. But let me be clear in saying that I and many others see and feel the deep injustice embedded in the existing districts that have been drawn in North Carolina that have resulted in an unrepresentative apportionment of power in our congressional delegation and in the North Carolina General Assembly. Make no mistake that the people you are supposed to be representing are unaware of the injustice and undemocratic practices that have been perpetuated by the current process of determining districts. We know how the system is being manipulated to maintain the power of the current majority. And we know that you aren't the first ones to do it. Gerrymandering has a long and sordid history in North Carolina and in other states. But it's time to end the injustice. We now know how to draw fair districts through a nonpartisan, neutral process. We know because 8 other states, both red and blue, have already successfully developed redistricting processes using nonpartisan commissions to determine district boundaries. Along with this statement, I'm submitting to you a copy of the Arizona statute that outlines their nonpartisan commission redistricting process. That's a Republican state. Please use this and research the other states with similar systems in place. I urge you to bring justice and democratic principles back to the North Carolina state government. You are wrong if you believe your constituents aren't watching and don't care about democratic principles. We do care, and we are watching. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freedman. Thank you. I'd like to take a moment and recognize Representative Susan Fisher, who has joined us over here in the beautiful yellow. Welcome. We're glad you could be with us. And next up is Cameron Lail, L-A-I-L. Cameron Lail.
Hey, my name is Cameron. Is it on? Thank you. My name is Cameron. I'm a resident of Haywood County. Still not working? It's my luck. They can't hear you. Too tall. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Better.
All right. My name's Cameron. I'm a resident of Haywood County. North Carolina is one of the most extremely gerrymandered states in the country. As a North Carolina citizen who has lived here my entire life, I ask that you and the rest of the General Assembly make sure my vote counts and that you do not use your power as representatives of the state of North Carolina unfairly by using the redistricting process to alienate voters to stay in power. I recommend an independent, nonpartisan redistricting commission. This will keep politics out of the process and restore faith in North Carolina democracy. Gerrymandering is un-American. It is wrong when Democrats do it, and it's certainly wrong when Republicans do it.
Thank you. Dr. Steve Woodsmall. Dr. Steve Woodsmall. Dr. Steve Woodsmall. All right. Leona Richard.
Thank you very much. I'm Leona Richard, and North Carolina is my home, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters of North Carolina, and I drove here from Chapel Hill. After the 2010 census, the League of Women Voters recognized that voting districts drawn in 2011 were unfair and unlawful. The districts were the product of an obscure and secretive process that intentionally packed and cracked population groups, diluting their votes to the advantage of the legislators entrusted with the task of producing the districts. The League joined other watchful and concerned organizations to take the cases to court and won the argument that the districts were purposefully drawn to minimize representation by race and to limit representation of the opposing political party. We are continuing to actively advocate this year for the fair districts to be drawn using the 2020 census data. The League is in favor of transparency and public input. Only 10 public hearing locations, such as this one, are scheduled for the state's 100 counties. Furthermore, it will be a travesty if additional public comment sessions are not provided after the draft maps are produced. At this time, only one public hearing for comment on draft maps, to be held in Raleigh, has been scheduled. Many organizations are asking for transparency in the process and an opportunity for adequate review and public input on draft plans. In 2011, there were 62 hearings in 36 counties convened before and after maps were drafted. 10 years later, we should be increasing transparency and not moving backward. Thank you for your consideration of this appeal.
Thank you, Ms. Richard. Jane Yokoyama. Jane Yokoyama. Feel free to correct me on that pronunciation.
Thank you, and my name is Jane Yokoyama. You said it correctly. It's right. Japanese, but I am, of course, a U.S. citizen here. And I want to thank the redistricting committee, all the legislators who came here, as well as the Western North Carolina staff, officers, and everyone else who's here. So my name is Jane Yokoyama. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I live in Buncombe County Precinct 2.1, North Carolina State Senate District 49, Assembly District 116, and U.S. Congressional District 11. My neighborhood consists of mostly retirees and young couples. I'm fortunate to live close to Klondike Homes Public Housing, Historic Montford, UNC Asheville, and I'm walking distance to downtown. I'm an active participant of UNCA's Lifelong Learning Institute and North Carolina Asian Americans Together. Both of these organizations are nonpartisan, honor and respect diversity, and promote community service. I'm testifying tonight because I believe strongly in fair maps, and I'm happy that 2020 maps put all of Buncombe County in District 11, and I request that it happens again. Buncombe County and Henderson County residents use the same businesses and other things, so these districts should be kept together. Unlike the past, universities and college campuses must be kept in the same district. Likewise, counties, Jackson, for example, small cities and towns should not be split into different districts. This would cause confusion and break up long-established communities. I also like Watauga being added to District 11 since we share similar interests and issues. Fair maps reflect the political makeup of our state and keep communities whole. It starts with a fair process That means these public hearings should be easily accessible to all North Carolinians before and after the maps have been drawn. I'm lucky that I have time to leave mid-afternoon and drive over an hour so I can testify in person. I speak for others in our community who are not as fortunate. Please let us have equal votes, equal voices, and equal value. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yokoyama. The chair recognizes Carol Travis. Carol Travis. Is Carol Travis in the room? All right. We'll move on to Karen Smith. Welcome,
Good
Ms. Smith.
afternoon. My name is Karen Smith. I'm the third vice chair for District 11 Democrats, and I am also a resident of Macon County. I would like to voice my concern over the hearing schedule, which has limited opportunities for comment, and for not having a virtual option in a surging pandemic. I respectfully request the committee refrain from splitting counties or urban centers. Rutherford County has been split between U.S. District 5 and 11. With regard to North Carolina House boundaries, Haywood County is in a situation where part of their county that includes Waynesville is in North Carolina House District 119 instead of in 118 with the rest of the county. Please cluster Graham and Swain and Jackson in North Carolina House District 119 and put the whole of Waynesville in 118. As far as North Carolina Senate boundaries are concerned, Buncombe has historically been vulnerable to a carve-out in the east and north to weaken the Democratic majority of the county. Do not place a boundary that dissects any of our urban areas in western North Carolina. North Carolina Senate District 47 should encompass Mitchell, Yancey, and Madison, whereas Polk shares much more in common with Henderson and Transylvania in District 48. Our rural western counties share many common interests, and our urban centers are critical to those surrounding counties. NC11 is 5th among state districts in income below the poverty line and 1st in residents aged 65 and older. Both populations need access to the types of services affecting fixed and low-income populations. We are tied to Asheville for health care, which is under assault by for-profit entities, rendering our rural areas at life-threatening risk due to the lack of emergent care and OBGYN services. Affordable housing shortages and costs have skyrocketed in recent years, driving many who work in Asheville to the surrounding counties. We are concerned about how our community will deal with extreme heat as the climate changes. Keeping mountain watersheds intact is also important. Our elected leaders must be accountable to the voters of Western North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Sharon Ramsey. Sharon Ramsey. Welcome, Ms. Ramsey.
Thank you. Good afternoon or evening. I'm Sharon Ramsey, a citizen of Macon County. First, thank you for traveling west of Asheville to hear our comments. We feel that most folks in North Carolina seem to think the state ends in Asheville. I wish there were more meetings scheduled. In 2011, there were over 50 meetings or opportunities to be heard on the issue of redistricting, a matter that will affect every citizen in North Carolina, whether they are a voter or not. I want the process to be transparent. Set up a website for the process. Appoint an independent committee with experts. Then, when they make their recommendation, post the report and the data, obtain comments, and hold another set of meetings, such as this, and add more venues, and in the evenings, and via Zoom, which is easier for everyone to attend or to comment, and let us see the proposed maps. And then we do the right thing to make everyone's vote equal. Don't split cities or towns or universities. Every person's vote should have an equal effect in the election. By drawing districts with surgical precision to obtain favorable outcome to one party, or to save the seat of a sitting official, or to draw the district to primary an official you don't like,
You disregard the votes of people and make a mockery of the process. Since the previous redistricting, in which we, the people of North Carolina, have spent millions of state dollars in legal fees, funds that could have been spent on education, infrastructure, or health care, rather than on attorneys fighting to keep the gerrymandered districts that were drawn for political advantage. Please, no more secrecy and tricks. We spent enough time and money cleaning up what you did before. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramsey. I'd like to remind everyone that if you came here not intending to speak and you've changed your mind, we're still taking names outside the door. Feel free to sign up. Gina Collias. Gina, Collias. We will move on to Levi Sweat.
Good afternoon, members of the North Carolina General Assembly. My name is Levi Sweat, as you already mentioned. I'm originally from Clayton, North Carolina. Currently, I'm a freshman here at WCU, representing the Student Democracy Coalition. We're a nonpartisan student organization dedicated to increasing voting, voter education, and voting rights on campus and across the state. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. The NC General Assembly redistricting committees have dedicated 13 public hearings to redistricting across the entire state. Many of these few hearings occur during the middle of the workday and the middle of the work week. None of these public hearings are being live streamed, even in the midst of a pandemic that's killed over 15,000 North Carolinians. Furthermore, all of the scheduled hearings take place before the release of the newly redistricted maps. These factors make it incredibly difficult for North Carolina citizens to have their voices heard by a General Assembly that has a clear and obvious history of gerrymandering and redistricting in the favor of the majority party. I ask you, members of the NC General Assembly and my fellow North Carolinians, to consider who is missing here. Fill up the empty chairs, the few that are here, with the single mothers too busy working to provide for their family, to the elderly who stayed home out of fear of contracting COVID, or those in Murphy and Cherokee County who couldn't make the hour-and-a-half drive to their closest public redistricting hearing. Even though we're disappointed with these decisions, we at Student Democracy Coalition believe there's still an opportunity for the public's voice to be truly heard. We demand more opportunities for the public to testify after the new maps have been released. We demand remote options for those who don't feel comfortable speaking in large crowds because of the pandemic. We demand future public hearings be live streamed. And finally, we demand more transparency about the redistricting process. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sweat. I'd like to back up and make sure I didn't miss Gina Collias, Collias. I thought I heard a murmur from the audience after I had called that name. Is Gina Collias in the room? I suppose not. Bo Hess.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bo Hess, and I am a current congressional candidate for North Carolina's District 11. Today, I am making sure the Commission commits to drawing equitable districts for competitive, fair, and free elections. My friends, please make no mistake. Our freedoms and our democracy are under attack. The assaults on our freedoms and our democracy are coming from within our borders, within our state houses, from people who claim they want less government intervention but only impose more and more government control. Let's all pause and ask ourselves a question. Are we indeed a representative democracy if one party can essentially never be voted out of power? Or put another way, if one party can write jurisdictions to their advantage to stay in power, if politicians choose their voters instead of the voters choosing their elected representatives, then our system of government is no longer serving the needs of the people. In our representative democracy, the voters are supposed to select the representatives we send to be our voice, not for partisan politicians to draw their districts in a way that takes away the ability for voters to make a competitive choice. To be clear, fair redistricting is not and should not be a Democratic or Republican issue. Instead, this is an issue of preserving our democracy and making sure that each person matters and each vote counts. Each person matters and each vote counts. Fair districts make sure the will of the people is enacted and will ensure that all voters and citizens have fair and equal representation. We have too many vital issues in which we need practical input and collaboration. We need to be bringing people into the process of civic engagement instead of working to disenfranchise voters. A bipartisan compromise now is to make this process transparent now. Implement a multi-party commission overseen by a citizen advisory panel and a panel of judges now. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. I'd like to invite to the podium Jean Tunnell or Tennell. Jean Tunnell or Tennell.
Yes, thank you very much for being here, all of you. People say tunnel, and I say, well, that's that hole in the mountain that you drive through. It's got two L's, so it's Tennell, but call me anything except late to eat, okay? I am Gene Tennell. I'm a member of the Jackson County Democratic Party, Jackson County NAACP. Much has been said already about gerrymandering, and I'm not going to rehash things that have already been said, but I would point out that elections are supposed to represent the will of all of the people, all of the people. Think about when people in our country march, protest, rally, so forth. Do they say, we have the freedom to do this? No, they say we have the right to do this. That's what we say about our opportunity to vote. We have the right to vote. League of Women Voters and several others have talked about the need for additional sessions like this. I would say amen to that, and I'd like to say we need a fair, inclusive, and transparent process, and here are the 4 ingredients I think that most of us could agree on that should be part of that process. Number 1, disclose all criteria, systems, and data used in the process. Number 2, have all drawings and revisions of maps done in public view. Number 3, ensure quality audio and visual broadcasting in public meetings. And number 4, disclose any third parties that happen to be involved in redistricting. We the people deserve an opportunity to have a say on House Bill 437, the Fair Maps Act, because that's what would establish the North Carolina Citizens Redistricting Commission and remove the process from the General Assembly. Thank you. There are no doubt people of faith here, of a variety of faiths, who can relate to this statement. Woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the people of their rights.
Thank you, Mr. Tennell. The chair recognizes Jeff Grow. Jeff Grow. I see him coming up over here. Hi, Jeff.
Folks, my name is Jeff Grow. I live in Fletcher, North Carolina. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I also want to thank the General Assembly for having these public meetings. This is our system of government in action, and I commend everybody here that's come out today to be engaged. We need more of that, not less. Redistricting this time around as a result of the census, adding a congressional seat is a good thing. North Carolina is growing. Unlike states like California who are losing seats, there's a reason for that. Maybe fiscal responsibility plays a part, other political and social factors, maybe the mountains have something to do with it. But there have been endless lawsuits on the maps over the last decade that have nothing to do with the growth in our state. It's about political power. Though I speak for myself tonight as a regional captain for the Convention of States, a grassroots organization trying to use Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution to rein in an out-of-control federal government and bring power back to us here in North Carolina, I have seen the voter confusion that has occurred due to the constantly changing state house and Senate district lines in particular. That is not good for our representative form of government. It has to stop. The process by law is a General Assembly responsibility, and in my opinion, it should stay that way. Calls to have an independent, quote-unquote, commission will not solve the problem. It will just add another layer of politics. And all the outside groups, like Eric Holder and the former U.S. Attorney General under Obama, who's the head of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, and Common Cause, a Soros fundus organization, who will no doubt file suits on whatever maps are drawn, need to stay out of North Carolina. This is a state issue. I support the process that's been announced. It's the same one from the last court-ordered process. The legislators will attempt to follow county boundaries. I agree with that, with some exceptions, obviously. It will prevent oddly shaped districts like the famous District 12. And the process, as I understand it, will not use racial or political data. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guerra. I'd like to invite Gail Kemp to the podium. Gail Kemp. Gail Kemp. Suzanne Klimek, K-L-I-M-E-K. Suzanne Klimek. Welcome.
Hi there. Put my glasses on. My name is Suzanne Klimek. You almost got it right. I live in Waynesville, North Carolina, and today I'm just representing myself as a native North Carolinian who loves my state. In the long term, I do think that North Carolina needs an independent, nonpartisan group to draw district boundaries based on census data. But in the absence of that, I'd like to share my concerns and interests for this year's redistricting effort. I believe that all North Carolinians deserve fair representation. I am adamantly against district boundaries being drawn to serve a particular party or potential candidate. If I understand what I've read about this year's process, lawmakers cannot consider race, partisan data, or past election results in drawing these boundaries. I am asking that y'all adhere to these criteria. I also believe that the final maps should include a detailed explanation of why the boundaries were chosen. And I believe that the public should have another opportunity for input after maps have been drafted and released. I was a career civil servant for the state of North Carolina. I held public hearings and used the comments and data received to modify recommendations for specific regulations. My interest was always in doing what was best for the citizens of the state. My final request to you is that you take this process seriously and that you consider the comments that you receive with care and that your subsequent actions are made in the interest of all North Carolinians. Thanks for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Gerard Stam. Welcome, Mr. Stam.
And you can call me Jared. My mother did.
Okay, Jared.
And I hope you all have noticed that there is a pattern going on in this forum. And I hope you all are listening very, very closely to that pattern. I live in Candler, on the edge of Haywood County, but I reside in Buncombe County. I'm here to speak to the most important issue for me personally and broadly for my community, and that is to have, as everybody else has said, fair and truly representational elections. However, as all of us should know, this is becoming harder and harder whenever partisan redistricting rolls around. Let's face it, those in power don't like to share their power. It's like they never went to kindergarten. And they will do anything possible to retain power. Gerrymandering, the unfair partisan process of drawing voting districts, is the most sure way of keeping that political power, more so than money. If redistricting is not conducted in an impartial, nonpartisan way, and not just some promise to be fair from the party in power, it will be de facto gerrymandering and such meetings as this will turn out to be meaningless. Worse, these public response forums would turn out to be window dressing and something the party in power can disingenuously point to as an open and transparent process. Nonetheless, I will take Senator Chuck Edwards at his word when he says public input is a historical process to which the public should contribute because of our important role. Doggone it, we wouldn't need a meeting like this if the process was already fair in the first place. But since this is the process allowed us, please take the voices of your electorate to heart. Let us comment again after the redistricting lines have been drawn. Let us have continued access to all the comments, and above all, ultimately change the system of redistricting to where it is totally honest and fair. Stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stam. Robert Thornton. Robert Thornton.
There's a great deal of shame on this process. And North Carolina deservedly has the, carries the honor of a poster child for gerrymandering. Why was this meeting room and building not publicized? Why is there not signs out there on the road showing that this is where we need to be? And why are there not signs out here showing people how to get into this particular room? That cast a lot of doubt on this process to begin with. I want to underscore keeping the county whole, the county's whole. I want this process, of course, to be transparent. Litigation will be, right around the corner if you don't. And then the other thing I'd like to say is, very quickly, this should have been, certainly should have been, at least on the internet, if streamed. But it probably should have been on UNC public television and allowing people to call in. I would urge you to consider that. And the last thing I guess I have to say is I really miss people like Bill Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton. I'm going to begin to call two names since apparently we've got a lot of folks in the back of the room that are speaking, so that if you are in the back of the room, or if you're the next speaker up, you can move your way closer to the front, and we can get to everyone's comments. First up is Amanda Huber or Huber, and then behind that is Aaron Littlefield. So Amanda Huber. And if Aaron Littlefield is near the back of the room, if you could be close to the mic when we're ready. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Huber. Close enough. I am a voter in Buncombe County, and the better. Ooh, it's weird to hear your own voice. My name is Amanda Huber. I am a voter in Buncombe County and the campaign manager for Eric Gash for Congress. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here this evening, but I'm just here as a private citizen voter myself. I don't want to take up too much time. I thank you all for coming out. I also noticed the pro-gerrymander representation is pretty low in the room this evening. I just wanted to underscore, so I myself turned 18 in 2006. Please don't do the math. But what that means is that I've never been able to vote in a local election that hasn't been ridiculously gerrymandered. I've never been able to vote not knowing what the outcome of that election was going to be already. And for the last decade and a half, I have voted for politicians who have promised a brighter future for future generations like mine, and I urge you all to consider that as you're drawing lines through the middle of universities and down the streets where we live. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Littlefield. Aaron Littlefield, and then after that, we have John Johnson.
Thank you. My name's Aaron Littlefield. I'm a local here in Jackson County. I moved up for college back in 2011, so this is 10 years that I've lived here. Class of 2014 for Western Carolina University in political science. I went in knowing two things. You can always count on death and taxes, but Dr. Cooper taught me a third, and that's that anytime there's redistricting in North Carolina, there's probably a lawsuit right around the corner. So I think he actually might have written a book on one of those. Anywho, so I am coming as a registered Republican. I'll go ahead and out myself here in the room. That being said, I can still, I think, voice some concerns that perhaps everyone else can agree with. I think that communities of interest should be maintained. That includes every Western North Carolina county. I think each county essentially functions, I teach social studies now, it essentially functions almost like a city-state. Jackson County has Silva, you've got Franklin and Macon County, and so on and so forth. It's actually quite simple. I went online, and if you were to take just the western 15 most counties, starting with Avery, Mitchell, McDowell, Buncombe, Henderson, and then everything over to Cherokee, that puts us within 5,000 population of whatever the mean would be for 1/14 of the district. So I would suggest for a compact district that doesn't have this former catamount having to drive all the way to App State, 4 hours away to do political events, to be able to just have, you know, a district that goes from Cherokee over to McDowell. It would not include anything from Rutherford County and anything from Polk unless you have to balance out that last 5,000 people in order to make it specific. And if you have to prioritize for balance things out, it should be done in the way that minimizes the disruptions of those communities. For example, 5,000 votes out of Polk County would be a much larger impact than, say, 5,000 votes out of Rutherford or Buncombe County, or even Henderson County in that case. So as far as prioritization, I would recommend don't split the counties, but if you have to split a county, go for those where the few votes that you have to split are going to have the least amount of impact of disrupting a community of interest. Thank you.
Thank you. John Johnson, and then after that, I only have, it looks like a first name, Ariel, John Johnson, and then Ariel. Welcome, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. I'm a citizen of Buncombe County for 45 years, and I'm here representing myself and my family. Basically, I have heard just about everything I wanted to say. I think that the district is too large. I think that we should be having more meetings like this. I think there should be more transparency. I believe that we should be looking at the maps after they're drawn and talking again. And I would urge this committee and whoever else is involved to take these points deeply to heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Ariel, and then I have behind that Emmett. Oh, okay. We're on two different lines. Well, then Ms. Emmett, behind
Hi.
you, we'll have Rosalind Storter.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Ariel Emmett. I'm a U.S. Fulbright scholar. I served in Kenya, Indonesia, and China before moving to this area. I'm here to talk about the cost of gerrymandering, which was part of the column that I wrote for the Asheville Citizen-Times. It was published on August 29th. There are two things that are very concerning to me as an outsider. I was born in New York. I've lived in North Carolina for 6 years, on and off, between my Fulbright. And the two things that I have seen that are most disturbing are the state of our public education and the state of our working poor without health care insurance. Our students now, we have nearly half of all North Carolina students are living in low income or impoverished families. Our education is now ranked 39th in expenditures for our fall enrollment because the Republican legislature, is siphoning off this money for private schools. What are legislators who represent the public, thank you very much, what are you doing as public servants siphoning off public money to private religious schools? That goes against our democratic principles of separation of church and state. and it's completely unacceptable. We have 61% of black students living in low-income houses or in poverty. We have 70% of Hispanic students. We have 660,000 working poor without health insurance. We've been offered Medicaid from the Affordable, not the Affordable Care Act, the Rescue Act from Biden, and the Republican legislature has turned it down. My feeling about all of this, I live in Henderson County. I'd like to see that county be one county. We have 17,000 minorities in that county. And I can tell you that these people need to be heard, not just the rich people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Rosalind Storer, and next up would be Carolyn Cagle. Ms. Storer, welcome.
Hola, buenas tardes. Voy a hablar en español. Mi nombre es Rosalind Storer, original de Puerto Rico, 26 años viviendo en el Distrito 11, Transilvania. I'm from Puerto Rico, 26 years living here in North Carolina, Transylvania County. Cuando el capítulo de NAACP se formó en Transilvania, me uní a NAACP y desde ese momento estoy trabajando para justicia social y protección del voto. Sin, the NAACP
Ms. Storer, if you
formed
could speak into the mic, please.
Since the Transylvania NAACP was formed, I became a member and I'm working for social justice and for protection of the vote of black people, Hispanics, and other minorities. Redistribution of districts affects black people, all the minorities. So we need not to make redistribution and protect the minorities. Candidates do not elect the voters. The voters elect the candidates.
Thank you. Carolyn Cagle, and then we'll have John Kuhlman. Ms. Cagle, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Carolyn Cagle. I'm from Jackson County. I'm a lifelong native of North Carolina. First, I'd like to thank you for your time and encourage each of you to do your best to assure that we as constituents are heard and their concerns considered in your endeavors to create equal and fair districts for Western North Carolina. I'd like to respectfully and specifically address North Carolina House redistricting and make suggestions as to how Western North Carolina counties can be grouped to best represent constituents who likely have common interests and needs. My suggestion is to group whole counties. Since county governments address the needs of all constituents in each county, it seems grouping whole counties is the best way to more easily and fairly represent voters and help with similar needs within these groupings. Here are the three groupings I would suggest. The most western grouping would be Cherokee, Clay, Graham, and Macon, whole counties. Next grouping, the whole of Swain, Jackson, and Transylvania counties. Then this leaves the whole of Haywood and Madison counties for the last grouping. This approach would place neighboring counties together, provide good logistics and easier communication between legislators and constituents. This is, I'm sure we all agree, the primary goal of having elected representation in the democracy we know as America. Thank you again for your time and for considering my suggestions.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Storer. John Kuhlman and then Jacqueline Jenkins. John Kuhlman. John Coulman. John Kuhlman. Are you in the room? All right, then we'll invite Jacqueline Jenkins to the podium, and behind that will be Leslie Boyd.
Thank you. Some of us are vertically challenged. Thank you all for having this hearing. but I, as someone else said, everybody said everything that I wanted to say, and I hope that means that you all are taking notes and listening, because obviously it is a big, big priority to us that, especially during a time of pandemic, that we are able to have virtual experience. Like other people, I'm questioning the whole process of the redistricting. It is not transparent. One thing that I wanted also to mention that I think Rosalind brought clear to us, there has been no accommodation made for translation for Spanish, Cherokee speakers, nor for the hearing impaired. And I think that's unconscionable. Mostly, I want to say that I think this process, as it is presented this time, is a real slap in the face of democracy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Leslie Boyd, and then Darlene Azarmani. So Leslie Boyd, are you in the room? And if, is Leslie Boyd in the room? And then if Darlene Azarmi is in the room, if you'd make your way closer to the podium so you'll be ready when I call upon you, I'd appreciate it. Ms. Boyd? Darlene?
I'm
Oh,
Darlene.
I've lost track. Darlene Azarmi and then Katie Dean. But do we have a Leslie Boyd here? All right, we're going to move on. Darlene Azarmi, you have the podium. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Darlene Azarmi. I am from Lincolnton, North Carolina. Went to school in Wilmington, where I became a poll worker in my very first election. I currently reside in Swannanoa in Buncombe County, and I'm in the Buckeye Cove area. And crazy enough, my district, I actually shared a district with my mother, who still lives in Lincolnton. I was in Patrick McHenry's district up until very recently, which just really made no sense to me. And ever since getting involved, in politics at a very young age, in my first election, I've heard people say that, does my vote count? Over and over again, all the way from Wilmington, all the way to Swannanoa. And, it's commonly said that allowing politicians to draw their own maps is like letting a fox guard a hen house. That's statistically proven to be the most effective way to explain the process to people. So here tonight, I'm having deja vu, remembering driving out to the public hearings on voter ID, those hearings that were held at the Board of Elections in Silva, and they were found to target Black people with surgical precision. And it is unacceptable. I am here tonight to echo many of the points that folks in this room have made. But in terms of the redistricting criteria, there shall be no consideration of race in these maps when they are drawn, and you must consider communities of interest when you draw these maps. Particularly folks mentioning the splitting of college campuses. It's unacceptable for college students, one dorm is one district and one dorm is another. Never again. Never again, not in this process. We are here tonight for a reason. The fact that there were over 60 hearings in the last process and there's around 10 tonight is unacceptable. And we need to have a hearing after these maps come out, not just one in Raleigh. We need to have access. County commissions and city councils have gotten with the program. We need to have access via Zoom, via phone, any other way so folks can have their voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Katie Dean, and after that will be Jennifer Knepp. Ms. Dean, you have the podium. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Katie Dean. I'm one of the candidates for the U.S. House in Western North Carolina against Madison Cawthorn. and all of the other people that are running against Madison Cawthorn. And it's clear that the desire for a government that is fair and well represented, it's a testament to the room that is completely full this evening. And what I'm about to say is continued sentiments that we've already heard. Here's a few things that we know to be true. We live in the most extremely gerrymandered state in our country. The history of gerrymandering in North Carolina is long and complex, and we know it knows no party. The bias continues to keep a heavy thumb on the scale, and gerrymandering and dark money in politics are unraveling our democratic process as we know it, and it's led to the extremism that we see today. The stakes continue to escalate. Here in Western North Carolina, we suffer the consequences of gerrymandering, and it's weakened critical economic function in our local economies with regards to lack of access to broadband, our crumbling infrastructure, access to affordable health care, including expanded Medicaid, and very simple decisions like giving teachers the pay raises they deserve. Today, more than ever, it seems like common ground is some distant memory. So let's find our footing on the core fundamental piece of our democracy, and that is our vote. So my ask is this: draft the maps using a third-party, nonpartisan commission so that the people with the most to gain from partisan divide are not the people drawing the boundaries. As a taxpayer, that's an investment I'm willing to make. At minimum, have a third party check your work. Hold more than one review session for the entire state, and make your sessions accessible to the public via live stream. And we know that that still includes and disenfranchises the bulk majority. The people deserve accountability and transparency from our elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Knupp and then Jake Quinn. Do we have Jennifer Knupp?
Knapp.
Knapp. All right. Thank you. Welcome.
Yep. Hi,
And then
I'm
Jake Quinn.
Jennifer Knapp. I live in Otto over in Macon County, and I'm here on behalf of the Franklin First United Methodist Church Social Justice Committee. So I would just like to mirror the things that have been said before about keeping counties together, but consider the fact that North Carolina is a very physiographically and socioeconomically complex state. So we have the mountains, we have the coast, and in both of those locations, there's a lot of issues with a lot of tourist dollars, which drive up property values with low-paying minimum wage jobs. And the people who live in these places who work in these places cannot really afford to live there any longer. So it's really important to keep these areas together so that these kind of problems can be solved. And my other point is that I'd like to suggest that overall the redistricting plan needs to include a second phase. After the draft maps come out, we need to have these meetings again so that, because we're all making comments about something we have not seen. So if we could have the draft maps come out and have additional meetings, that would really increase the faith of the citizenry of North Carolina in the fairness of the maps, and in that their voices will be heard when we vote, in both in terms of making legislative decisions and all elections. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes the folks that signed up online. We're going to now begin with the folks that are here in the room. Lila Tevet, T-V-E-D-T, and behind that will be Serpio Fernander, F-E-R-N-A-N-D. I think it's E, maybe a Z. So, thank you. Correct me at the microphone if you don't mind. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Layla Tevet. I'm a resident of Bryson City in Swain County. My husband is Luke Hyde. He and his family have lived in Swain County for many generations. I have not. I was born in Asheville. My dad was an officer in the U.S. Navy, and we moved about every 2 years. After school in Saigon and Japan and Florida, I came back, As politicians like to say, I got here as soon as I could. Let's talk about Swain County. Swain is one of the poorest counties in the state. In 2019, our poverty rate was 17.5%. Out of a population of about 14,000 people, only 5,642 were employed. More than 8,000 were not. And that was before COVID hit us. But being poor does not mean we are uninvolved. There are about 7 million voters in Swain County in 2020. 36% were registered Democrat, 30% were registered Republican. Note that 33% were registered as unaffiliated in 2020, with 7% registered with other parties. That means the unaffiliated and other vote outnumbers Democrats and Republicans. In fact, according to this university's Chris Cooper, in every year since 2014, the plurality of new voters in North Carolina are registering as unaffiliated. Taken as a whole, Western North Carolina has more people who are registered unaffiliated than any other region in the country. Luke Hyde and I are both active in the Democratic Party. We have been for years. We believe it was wrong for Democrats to gerrymander districts when they were in power, and it is wrong for Republicans to do it now. If you have to manipulate district lines to stay in power, it means your politicians are too weak or your policies are too unpopular to win a fair election. That's not how we want the world to see us. You have the opportunity to make it right with districts that allow fair representation of all voters, your constituents. Please don't throw that opportunity away. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Serpio, I'm not going to attempt this last name again. Please tell us who it is. And then Tom Downing, if you'll work your way up.
Yeah, please. I think I can have myself heard all the way to the end, but let's do this. Thank you. My name is Sergio Fernandez. I don't blame you for reading my name that way. I have a horrible handwriting. I'm here, I'm the executive director at the Latino Advocacy Coalition in Henderson County. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit. One of our job is to advocate in favor of the Latin community. In North Carolina, it's 1 million strong. The census will tell you it's 1,026,000. In reality, it's a lot more than that. And the reason is because most of our people are afraid to be counted. I believe that everybody in the state needs to be heard. Everybody needs to do what they need to do. You guys have a job to do. When I look at you, and I don't mean this in any disrespect form, I don't see the diversity. I would love to see somebody that looks like me with you guys. I believe that work can be done together. I don't believe that separating ourselves can be a good thing. Thank you. I believe that we are able to offer something that many people has asked you. Starting tomorrow, and for the 9 left meetings you guys have, I can provide no cost to you. Translation and streaming live of these meetings. Kind of have your commitment that I'm okay to do that with you guys for the next several meetings. Is that a yes?
No, I'm listening.
I can have these meetings live stream with translation into Spanish, no cost to you, so everybody in the state can see what's going on here. Will that be okay with you?
We appreciate that suggestion. Thank you.
I'll be there tomorrow, so you can let me know tomorrow. I have my cameras and everything with you. I hope that the redistricting of this is not affected. I know you guys do a lot of work, but also you have your personal agendas. For example, Senate Bill 101, it shouldn't be part of the decision-making when the redistricting is happening. So I hope you guys do the best job. Thank you for doing this, and I'll be there tomorrow with my cameras unless you tell me no for whatever reason.
We appreciate your feedback.
Thank you.
Mr. Fernandez. I'd just like to call to the audience's attention that I called a name a while ago that I didn't recall, and the reason was I was working on a duplicate sheet, so I didn't skip over anyone. I also have what I think may be a duplicate name here, Cynthia Faircloth Smith. Is there two of them in the room? Just the one? Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Smith. Tom Downing, and then Catherine, is it Garner or Carter? Okay, if you'd work your way towards the podium, I'd appreciate it. We did enjoy hearing now from Mr. Downing.
Thank you very much, Chairman. My name is Tom Downing, and my wife and I have lived here for 16 years, just literally stone's throw down the road here in Cullowhee. We moved here because when we moved here, North Carolina was a progressive, wonderful state. North Carolina drew us here. It really did, because of the people, and because of the policies, and because of the way that things were done fairly and squarely. My wife and I, when I retire, we're going to leave because of the BS that's been gone on with this redistricting. So what I say to you is two things. Number one, change our minds. Do it fair, do it square, do it right, do it the North Carolina way, the way that we thought North Carolina was when we moved here. And the second thing is, I would challenge each of you and everyone in the General Assembly on every side of the aisle, everybody, find a high school civics class, go to it, explain what you're doing, and listen to what they say. Find a middle school social studies class, go to it, explain what you're doing, and listen to what they say. Find an elementary school social studies class, explain what you're doing, and listen to what they say and what they ask. Kids today are smart enough to understand what we're doing here. They understand division. This is a gigantic division problem. That's all it is. It's either fair or it isn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Downing. Catherine Carter, and then after that would be Brian Gastel. Ms. Carter, welcome.
Yes, thank you. My name is Catherine Carter, and I live here in Cullowhee. And I would very much like to see the redistricting done not by legislators, but by an independent commission. And this is not a personal critique, as others have noted. There's a long history of gerrymandering, not only by Republicans, but by Democrats. And this is a national embarrassment to all of us. It's an expensive national embarrassment. And the quickest way to fix this is for the legislature to pass House Bill 437, the Fair Maps Act. But that bill, and none of the others like it which have been filed this year, has not come up for a vote. And that is not happening. It needs to be happening. It is what we need in order to avoid more decisions like the 2013 decision that split Buncombe County between the 10th and 11th districts. It is what we need to avoid more maps which split largely black cities and institutions with the effect of dividing and making worthless their votes. It is what we need to avoid the supposedly colorblind approach to redistricting, which dilutes the impact of black North Carolinians' votes while claiming that it didn't do anything of the kind. An independent commission is what we need to draw new maps that can consider race and ethnicity insofar as is necessary to avoid violating any provisions of the Voting Rights Act, which currently stand to be violated. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Next up, we have Brian Gassel, and then after that will be Angelica Wind. Mr. Gassel, feel free to correct my pronunciation.
It's perfect, thanks. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Brian Gastel, and I'm a Jackson County voter. I've lived here for 23 years, right in Cullowhee. My hope is that redistricting will better reflect voter demographics statewide and privilege representation over partisanship. Drawing districts to reinforce partisan power within individual districts rather than to reflect statewide voter demographics disenfranchises voters across the state, since state representation no longer reflects voter political positions statewide. Furthermore, such entrenchment of incumbents who are not worried about re-election because of partisan districting does a disservice to the citizens of their own party as well, since representatives can rely upon districting rather than upon representing their constituents well in order to stay in office. I'm a proud citizen of the great state of North Carolina, but I am ashamed of the extent to which our state has, in the past, and on both sides of the aisle, allowed partisan power to supersede the kind of representation we expect and hope for in American democracy. Please consider redistricting as a chance to fairly, and I would say patriotically, address gerrymandering's assault on the very core of the democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Angelica Wind, and then behind that will be Gail Woody. Miss Wind?
Thank you, thank you. Thank you to the chairman and all of you who took the time of the day and evening to be here and continue to be here and have your voices heard. My name is Angelica Wind, and I am here speaking on behalf of myself. I have lived in Buncombe County since 2007. I am a proud daughter of farm worker parents who picked the fruit that many of y'all probably ate when you grew up and in your homes, and families continue to pick this fruit. And as a daughter, I remember being a child and recognizing that my parents and many other of the farm workers had no voice that was related to the policies that impacted them every day. And so therefore, I'm here to stress the piece of voice. It is so important for us who live in this beautiful country, in this beautiful area, that we not forget that we all have a voice. Whether we can vote or not, whether we're in the process of getting legal status so we can vote, we still all have a voice. And one of the beautiful things of living in this country and why my parents chose to come here is because they knew that we had processes here that protected our voices. And as such, I come to you and advocate to not forget that all of you have a voice and all of us can stand up. But also, part of that voice is transparency. And I advocate for transparency, fair transparency in this process so that voices do not get left behind regardless of what political affiliation you have. Sometimes we as a community need to be reminded that together we're stronger and we have much of a stronger voice. We can speak louder, be heard with our voice, and do not forget that. We must be heard in this process. We must be heard in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wynn. Gail Woody?
Yes.
And then behind Ms. Woody will be Tina Vaz. Ms. Woody, you have the podium.
Thank you. My name is Gail Woody. I live here in Dillsboro in Jackson County, and I have the privilege of serving on the Jackson County Board of Commissioners. As an elected official myself, I want to thank you all for being here, first of all, and then for all you do to serve the residents of North Carolina. I know it's a hard job, and I appreciate what you do. I'm requesting that you all engage in an open and transparent process so that we know how and why each district is drawn. I ask that you keep counties whole. Free and fair elections are the foundation of our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Tina Vaz, and then behind that we'll have Chris Tabor.
Hello, my name is Christina Vasquez. As we have discussed tonight, the state has attracted many more citizens and people, and there is a reason for that, because of the quality of life, and we want to protect that quality of life. In order to protect that quality of life, we need to have fair representation. If you watch the news, the environment is probably about the most important issue at this time. And we want to make sure we get people in office that support our ideas and want to protect the environment. Several years ago, I had an opportunity to run for the State House. I was the first Latina to run. Some people thought I had very good ideas. I was the only person who could promise a permanent budget surplus, which I think everybody in this state would like. Unfortunately, I didn't stand a chance because the area I ran was so severely gerrymandered. So please, at this time, we have a good quality of life, and we want to keep it that way. We want to attract people to the state, and in order to do that, we must have fair representation. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Tabor, and then behind that, we have Wilma Merlo.
Good evening, I'm Chris Tabor, I'm from Silva. I'm with the NAACP in Jackson County as well as the Democratic Women of Jackson County. I want to call gerrymandering what it is, political corruption. Plain and simple. It's a desperate and cynical bid to undermine democracy and to thrust minority rule upon the people. We need to bring back integrity to the process and allow the people to hold their representatives to account. I too would like to second the motion to hold more hearings of this nature, put them on Zoom as well as public television. Thank you.
Thank you. William Merlo, and then behind that will be David Rode.
Yes, William Merlo. Good evening. My name is William Merlo. I'm a U.S.-born citizen who's had the privilege and opportunity of being a part of the democratic process in a red state, a blue state, and even 6 foreign nations. I speak 4 languages, and I pride myself in building bridges between different cultures, communities, and political views. I currently reside in Buncombe County. I personally have always been an independent voter and do not wish to represent a party today, but rather I'm a very concerned citizen of North Carolina. As a nation, and with it this state, we have always said that we pride ourselves in the democratic principles and practices, the core heart and soul of our great nation and of our great state. We, the people of North Carolina, which include its representatives, must fight to end the gerrymandering going on in the 21st century America. This is shameful, it is corruption, and it is simply un-American. As representatives, you fight to uphold our values as Americans and North Carolinians. And what I'm seeing today in this process of redistricting in North Carolina today more closely resembles the voting corruption that goes on in third world nations than the most beautiful and democratic nation in the world. I urge you and hopefully compel you to go back to your main purpose as representatives, which is to uphold our democracy and make it stronger by the day, and not continue the process of corruption that gerrymandering brings to us Americans. To conclude, we need more of these events after the people and representatives have had a chance to review the maps, more virtual hearings, the end of gerrymandering throughout the entire state, and an independent, nonpartisan commission to use the 21st century technology and its solutions that are at our fingertips to redistrict fairly, correctly, and most importantly, democratically. I reiterate that it is your duty as political representatives to put democratic principles of our country and state first at all stages of your day-to-day affairs and end gerrymandering that puts us a century behind and makes our great state of North Carolina a mockery in our democracy. And if you don't do these things, you're making a mockery of all of us Americans, all of us North Carolinians. Thank you.
Thank you. David Rode. Is David Rode?
Hey, Chuck. Over here. My name is David Rode, and I'm a proud resident of Henderson County, proud Western Carolina University alumni, and proud ex-student body president of this wonderful institution. I just want to say I'm proud of North Carolina. We're a great and powerful state. We lead in business, education, quality of life. And I want to take a moment and thank the General Assembly members here for their time and for your commitment to fair and free elections. A speaker earlier mentioned that gerrymandering was wrong when Democrats do it, but certainly wrong when Republicans do it. To that speaker, I say, it's wrong when anybody does it. Stop with the violent left-right pendulum swing of partisan politics. Get out from your telephone and your tablet screens and pay attention. There are Republicans and Democrats in this room right now. I see some very powerful ones. And this room hasn't burned down yet. You're sitting next to each other. I would also like to draw your attention to where we are today on a college campus. My generation is more connected and involved in the political process than ever before. Western Carolina University has won national awards for their efforts in getting the students to vote. Come early voting time, we have a polling station on campus, but on election day, that polling location is moved off campus to the local rec center. We are watching, we are listening, and we are running for office or plan on running for office. I will say I do not claim the current congressional representative. But I ask that this committee, while redrawing district lines, also legislate that all higher educational institutions, community colleges and up, have a polling location during the general election. If this makes any political party nervous, develop better ideas that cater to your constituents and not to your donors. And finally, for the love of God, as a catamount, please do not include Watauga County. I could not fathom being in the same district as a Mountaineer, whatever that might be. So.
Michelle Woodhouse. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Edwards. Thank you, General Assembly members, for being here. And thank you, fellow Western North Carolinians, for being here. There's a lot of other places that you could be tonight, but you chose to be here because you care about what's happening in our communities and our country. We all moved here because you know it's hard to get from here to there. So we all drove far. We all drove over cliffs, hopefully not literally, but we drove here because we care about what's happening. 1 in 5 voters in North Carolina in the 2022 election will come out of Charlotte or Raleigh. It'll be the first election ever when the largest voting bloc in North Carolina is unaffiliated voters. We've heard Democrats talk about things being unfair. We've heard Republicans tonight talk about being unfair. But I will tell you, we have to get people to the polls, not the courtroom, to the polls. Only 75% of eligible Democrats voted in 2020. We had only 81.6% of registered Republicans vote in 2020, and only 69.8% of unaffiliateds. We can draw the lines, and we will draw them in a way that's constitutional. I have great confidence in the members of our General Assembly. But if people don't show up to vote, the map had nothing to do with it. The map had nothing to do with it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Woodhouse. That concludes the list of folks that have signed up either online or outside. Would anyone that is in the room that did not sign up care to get 1 minute? Anyone else? All right. With that, I would certainly like to thank my colleagues, Representative Fisher, Representative Carney, Representative Clampett, Representative Pless, Representative Gillespie, and it is really nice to have somebody else from the Senate help anchor things, Senator Mayfield. Thank you all for being here. And next in the process is that we are continuing the public hearings, and the redistricting committees will reconvene. I certainly would like to invite you, because I heard a number of comments from the audience that suggested that we should have a website for the process. We actually have that on the General Assembly website. I invite you to visit it often. And then I also heard a number of folks may know people that had difficulty in being here for one reason or another, and there's still plenty of opportunity for those folks to give us feedback, and I invite them to do that on the General Assembly website. We've got a particular portal to receive feedback. We will be consolidating all of those comments for the benefit of the committee afterwards. So if you've got friends that couldn't make it or had difficulty in getting here, please send them to the General Assembly website. And then the website is ncleg.gov, ncleg.gov, and there's a special redistricting section there. I also ask you to invite your friends and neighbors to go into that portal and continue to give us feedback. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank all of you for your interest and participation in your state government, and this meeting is adjourned.